Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Agency Automators. We're back. It's very exciting. It's been how many months? 10? Some crazy long period of time. We've had all kinds of crazy things with guests last minute getting crazy sicknesses, pushing recording dates out. Jordan, it is so great to be with you again. How's it going?
Oh, doing great, Noah. It's nice to be back and recording, and I genuinely can't think of another guest to have on to kick things off again.
Oh my God, what a year it's been. Arnout Hellemans, our guest. You're an amazing dude. You have, like one of my favorite things about 2021 is been getting to know you, collaborating with you on a bunch of different things. It's been pretty amazing. David Sotomano, I believe, introduced us, and he early on told me, like, you got to talk to this guy, Arnout. He's going to blow your mind. Right? How it's so great to be with you. How have you been? Great. You've had a bunch of
Uh,
crazy stuff happening the past couple months.
yeah, but it's been, I think for most of us in the industry, it's been crazy business wise, right?
Yeah.
Because all businesses needed to go online and how do I do this and blah, blah. So it's been, I was completely worked out, like completely swamped in work.
Yeah.
Took a few months off and then that was really nice. So that was July, end of July and August. And then early September, I got a bacteria in my leg, which ended me up in the hospital. So that wasn't good. Um, did it have something to do with the stress or the lack of rest? I don't know. But we're getting better. And I just want to say, Noah, I mean, you've also inspired me to think differently on certain topics. You've introduced me to different people, which is one of the reasons we do this, right? We do
Totally.
these chats and everything. And it's all about the community. I see a lot of people saying, well, the community is toxic and those kind of things. I don't feel that way. Like, I think there's loads of fun people in SEO. If you're open, if you're willing to share, if you're willing to learn, if you're willing to teach other people, it's a really fun industry to be in. So no, all good. As I said, another hopefully month and a half, and then I'll be able to go to the gym again. But up until that time, it's just me relatively stuck at home. But hey, all good.
So, for folks who don't know you, can you give us a little bit of background? Can you tell us how you got started, how long you've been in digital marketing?
Yeah, I can. So my background is in telecom, and then after I was in telecom, I was basically asked to build a big, well, it's kind of like a real estate platform. So I got into that. We we put in, not my own money, about 10, 11 million. We went on TV, we did radio. This was all in the Netherlands. And we got a complete website built with all the information about buying a house, renovating it, and all of that. There was like real estate for sale and all kinds of stuff. Big website. And I was responsible for marketing, because that's where I wanted to go. And then I saw, like, should it be this red or this red? And I was like, who gives a damn? I don't care. I really don't care. But then somebody said, then maybe you like Google Analytics. I looked at it. It was like, why would you want to do this? It's useless, right? So that was my first. And now I'm a big advocate of analytics. So, wow, can you imagine? But there was one thing that really stood out because this was back in 2007. And there were a few companies in the Netherlands offering SEO. And one of them, we basically asked to do an audit, and they said, it will set you back 20K. I was like, 20K? Can it be that hard? So I started reading SEO mods, and I read about page titles and H1s, and I started making some of these changes, and we pretty much doubled our traffic by just changing. We had H1s everywhere, and now they just became H1s, H2s, and everything. And we changed the page title to reflect the page, and boom, we shot up the ranks. And I was like, wow, that's cool. So that got me interested. Then I got a hernia, so I was unfit to work. But I had plenty of time reading. So I read like every single corner of the web talking about SEO. And I still had a website where I could make changes and see the benefit. The company got sold, and I ended up with an investor. And the investor said, you know what, we don't need you here, but here's a company that does conversion optimization and SEO. So I got in and met with the founder, and he said, you can do SEO. I said, yeah, but I'm not really an expert. And he was like, okay, I'll get the two biggest experts. One of them was Joost de Valk, the guy from the Joost plugin, the WordPress plugin. And the other one was Peter van der Graaf, who's a very creative SEO. I would say more black hat than white hat, but awesome learning things from, like internal linking, link building, and all of those stuff. And those two basically just taught me and introduced me to all the SEOs that were selling links throughout Europe. And that was my start. And after that, after 2 years, I basically decided to do it freelance. So I started freelancing, and that was 12 years ago. And I haven't looked back.
You've been able to freelance all that time?
Yeah.
Wow. That's really impressive. Okay. So you've been able to freelance for the past 12 years. That's totally amazing. Tell us about your mission.
Yeah, the thing that really drives me is to make the web a better place. And I feel like nobody should have a bad experience on the web. The same as we shouldn't be having bad experience in daily life in terms of shopping, but we constantly have.
Right.
We constantly have bad experiences, whether it's getting to a website where when you're looking for a new pair of trainers, and then you still have to do the search for the trainers you just saw, or whatever, or a checkout that doesn't work, or payment methods that break. But it's the same with information. You want to find something, but like the article is from 6 years ago and fully irrelevant. We've all seen this. So that's what really drives me. And I just love helping people. And I think, Noah, you've experienced the same thing. I'm more than happy to share knowledge, and it's just fun.
Totally. So do you think of yourself as a CRO, an SEO, a website optimizer? Like, have you ever thought about a label for yourself? How do you feel like you slot in?
I would almost say I'm an online business optimizer. Because first question is, how do you make money? And then the second question is, how much do you make when you get a lead in or whatever? Yeah. Because that defines where you should invest, right? If people don't know where they are at that moment, then why should you? It's the same even with corporate clients. Where do you make money? And they go, well, if you're a bank, you make pretty much all of your money in mortgages. So why wouldn't you optimize mortgages over the other things? So there's always this one question. It's like, how do you make money? Because everything should lead to that, to the goal you have. When people answer that question with, I just want to get my content out there, that's bullshit. Straight on. There might be some cases like governmental organizations where that's the goal, but in 95% of cases, that's not the goal. That's a way of getting attention, getting people to do what you want them to do. So yeah, it's so I would say, but I think in the course of what I've done in the past 12 years, I haven't purely been doing SEO, because at some point after doing SEO for 5 years, it got a bit boring. You get into the same client, you do the page title, the stuff, you optimize some other things, you need links, you buy links. Where's the fun? Like,
Right.
there's no challenge. And the other thing is, if you optimize the business from within, anything you get to do more traffic onto the website will give a way bigger added benefit. So if you optimize the checkout flow, so now it becomes easier to do, then say instead of 1 out of 100 converting, now you convert 3 out of 100. If you then throw 1,000 more in, you actually sell 30 more or 20 more than
Right.
you were. And so it triggered me. So in 2015, then I was like, how many years in? About 6 or 7. I went to a conference in Estonia where I was introduced to web psychology and analytics. And I was so amazed. I was fed up with SEO and PPC. So I just took all of my clients and we started doing conversion stuff and analytics. And that was, yeah. And in the end, when entities became a thing and schema and connecting the dots, that made SEO interesting again.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Arnout, one thing I've always found fascinating is like you've been able to kind of take a step back and look at the broader picture rather than getting like lost in the trees, especially on the side of Google, right? Like you brought up entities and schema. I guess like what is your thought process behind that? Like how are you able to put yourself in Google's shoes so well consistently? Like that's always fascinated me.
Well, I think what plays the biggest role is building a network of peers. So, and I was really lucky, and I have to thank Olga Andrienko from SEMrush, because she invited me over to a meetup in St. Petersburg and then afterwards in Helsinki, meeting all of these peers. And what I found amazing is if you share real life experience, real challenges and everything, you kind of get feedback in a different way. So I think giving a lot of information and knowledge to other people will open them up to their ideas, which keeps you ahead of the curve. Because the reason I go to conferences is not to listen to a talk. It's to talk to other speakers or to talk to other people in the bar, because that's where you get the nuggets. That's where you get the cool stuff, and that's where you can share and build relationships. And this way I was introduced to a guy called Jarno van Driel, who was in the W3C group together with one other SEO, Google, Bing, Yandex, Amazon, developing schema.org. So they developed the whole thing, and he had worked for the Next Web, and we were in the same building. So I was talking to these guys, and they basically said, you need to meet this guy. So they introduced us, and he blew my mind. And I was suddenly, I was on an inside track on this. But the only way to get there is by sharing what you know to other people. And then they will introduce you to, again, other people. So I feel that everything is connected. So you need to always be willing to help other people. And if you are, don't be afraid. So what I often hear, and you've heard this as well, when you share stuff, right? And I know, Noah, you do a lot of sharing on Clubhouse and stuff. But when you share stuff, people go like, why would you share that? That's a business secret, or that's like, but it's not. Because just think about any business or any person you talk to. They all were like 80% of them owns or manages a website, and they all need work. Every single one of them needs work, because even my website needs work. Every website needs work. So you're never out of a job. That's it. So
Right.
why bother? I mean, work will be there.
So one of the things that Jordan and I were talking about before the episode was how you think through Google's eyes when you make decisions about how to do optimization work on websites, and how entities play a role in that. Do you have anything to share on that topic?
So I think a really interesting one is that we tend to, or a lot of SEOs tend to work with rank trackers, right? And Search Console data. But how many of them actually do the searches themselves? Because the answers are in the SERP.
Yep.
So you might have the #1 ranking for a keyword, but if there's a full-size video carousel for that intent on top of you, you won't get the clicks.
Right.
Right? So it's all about understanding why things are in the SERP. And the most interesting thing, in my opinion, is that Google uses user behavior to change the SERP.
Right.
So
Totally.
if somebody Googles something and then switches directly into images, if enough people do that, then there will be images in the main SERP. Right? So you need to understand and think about yourself. Google, if you Google, try to figure out why something's there. Not just take it for granted. Why is it there?
Totally.
Why are certain features there? And once you start understanding why things happen, you can then build your own like little thing. Like, hey, wow, everything I do a why search, there is like these people also ask boxes.
Yeah.
And there's videos, or when I do a how-to, there's structured lists or videos. So if there's none of those, then if I create a structured list or a video, I have a fat chance to owning the SERP.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And John Murch was saying the exact same thing last night. It's like, you got to look at the SERPs. You got to look at the SERPs. You got to look at the SERPs. You can't just look at data.
No.
That's awesome. Speaking of tooling and tools generally, do you have a little list of your top 5 favorites that are in that you use all the time? And you can go bigger or shorter depending on.
Yeah. There's quite a few, but the ones I use 2 desktop crawlers, Sidebulb and Screaming Frog. I love Search Console. A lot of the data, and no other Search Explorer is awesome. And the other part, if it's a smaller site, I use Search Analytics for Sheets, which is very easy for people to use. Use the same information, way more than you can get in the normal interface. So cool. I absolutely adore Bing Webmaster Tools. And this might sound weird, but you can spy on your competitors' backlinks in there. You can get all the backlink data, including anchor text. You can and it's all for free, right? It's just lovely, really cool tool. And I wish they would have more things. I really like just Lighthouse with loads of things. I like some other little plugins like an HTTP 2 checker, so it's an extension. What else is there? View render source. Awesome. Wonderful extension by John Hogg. Yeah, those are some of the things I I really adore.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Jordan,
it.
do you have any questions, or should we jump into the stuff that he wants to share with us about Lighthouse?
Let's jump in because
Okay.
I know I'm gonna have a ton of questions about Lighthouse stuff.
Okay. Okay, so you should be able to share your screen, Arnouts. Do you want to give us
Yeah.
a summary as you jump in?
Yeah, I think the big thing here is no. Let's first set the stage. What I see, and now I've always been focused on optimizing for speed. And I personally think that Google's big push into speed is a cover up, partly cover up. So the reason, in my opinion, they push for speed is because they don't like rendering all the websites.
Right, 100%.
Because that if they can save on rendering, their profit goes up in the billions.
Yeah.
Right. So if we create cleaner websites with less scripts, less extensive stuff, they can save a lot of money. The way they've packaged it, it's great for the user. I know, I completely agree with that as well, but I don't feel it's the main reason. So one of the things I see happening a lot, and you've been seeing this as well, is like you do a Lighthouse test, it will give you some pointers. And I see a lot of SEOs focusing on scores. And I don't think that's right.
Ooh.
Because the scores only give you how much of the recommendations you actually did.
Right.
But what if a few of those things, so if everything is cached and you pretty much have a static page, then not having the best score, but a load time of within the second fully loaded, who cares about the score?
Right.
Right. So it's a combination of the two. And I think, so Lighthouse is not about scores, it's about getting a better user experience. So they shouldn't be blocked getting to your content at any point. So there's a few things that I want to mention. One is that everybody who uses Chrome and didn't opt out of sharing data with Google, their page loads are in a public data set, which is the Crux data set. And I would highly recommend everybody to check out, and we'll probably be able to share the links. But the Crux data set will help you benchmark against competitors in your SERP in terms of real user behavior. What I wanted to do is, what I was missing, and there's one tool, but I think it's broken now, that does it, is running Lighthouse at scale over every page. So the free website that does that is called batchspeed.com, where you can just add in your URL and it will work. But it was broken. I reached out to the guy who built it, and he hasn't come back. But that got me thinking. It's like, I want to have this internally. So what I started doing is, with the help of Dave Sotomano, is building something that would take a sitemap and then, or a list of URLs, and would basically do Lighthouse checks on all of them, and then store the results in BigQuery per day. Now, the interesting thing you can then do is take templated pages, like your blog pages or your product pages, and benchmark how much CSS is in there, how much JavaScript is in there, what the image size is, right? And once you have all of this, you can now, and now I'm going to share my screen, you can now use this, and this is called use Lighthouse for performance budgets. So what this is basically do is you can create a budget on everything. So you can say how many third-party scripts can be there, what every resource type can be. So script, maximum 125 kilobytes, and those kind of things, right? And then what you do, you can run this on anything. So you can make a Node.js application, all kinds of stuff. And this works with headless Chrome. So the really cool thing now is that a combination of real data from your main website, you can now do automated testing for anything that goes live. So especially large companies, then you can set the budget. So if you have an external development agency, you'll never release anything that is performing worse than where you were.
So this is the most important thing. And this is why when you started talking, I went, ooh, because we've talked about this a couple times, a whole bunch of months ago, where like you're embedded in the test process. And if you don't pass the test, you don't ship the code, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very cool.
And the really cool thing about this is you could even get this in your development contract. So you could say every 3 months, these things like scripts, CSS needs to be lowered by 10%. Otherwise, we're not going to pay your invoice. Now, what this means is that at some point they will need to refactor code, which will make everything easier. Now, doing this and really embedding it this way, you can basically put this in your automated CI/CD process, and it will just fail. And if the test fails, you need to do this again. The cool thing is, every developer can test it on his own machine. So there's no reason it should fail. So you need to first benchmark your pages, and then you can run it this way. Now, there's something really interesting because I've also helped the guys at Sidebulb developing some features. And Sidebulb now has performance budgets in place. So you can literally say, when you crawl the website using Sidebulb and with Chrome, you can say, I want to highlight me all the pages that ship more than 600 kilobytes of JavaScript or 300 or whatever. And then they will show all the ones that will fail the Lighthouse budgets, which is pretty amazing if you think about it.
So you shared this with me before, and my memory is that your budgets are way smaller than what I would have thought in terms of what you demand from your dev teams.
Well, yes, but it depends on where you are, right? So if the website is already pretty fast, then it's more like a security measure if new devs come in and those kind of things. And then it can be really small. So the other big thing is I see a lot of companies shipping an awful lot of code which is not being used apart from 3 pages.
Right.
So so this is why, and this will also fix that, because those templates that don't need it. So you first need to do a good audit before you can set performance budgets. But once you can, it's awesome, because now you're never taking a step back. And I think this is a common thing, right? We as SEOs say you need to fix this. You need to do this properly. And then they do a sprint of speed optimizations. And then 3 sprints down the line, we're back to square one. Well, not fully, but we've taken 3 steps ahead in terms of speed and then 2 steps back, because they've introduced new scripts for new features. And now you basically say, well, why have we dropped? Well, you've introduced new features. So if you have performance budgets in place, it won't happen.
Yeah. So how do you get work done? i.e., how do you like to present your recommendations for teams? Do you do bite-sized chunks, little blocks of 3? Are you giving big lists, or are you just saying fix these 3 things? Or
again, and this is, I think, a common thing, right? It depends. But so the best way, so if you do this at big companies, what you need to do is align with their strategic goals. Right. So for instance, if the goal for a company is inclusivity, it's things like environment, you can make on those 2 and revenue. On those 3, you can make a massive business case, because if you've got millions of visitors a day and you're shipping too much code, there's calculators out there that will show the CO2 impact. So then you've nailed that. The other one is, if you're shipping a lot of JavaScript and CSS, low-end devices are screwed, because for them the impact will be way higher. So there goes inclusivity. So now you've nailed 2 of their core values. Now the third one, and this I found a really interesting one. So I did a study with, I can't name the company, but what we did was we looked at the chance of somebody converting per bucket of load time. So time to full interactive, half a second. So we went from 1, 1.5, 1.5, 2, 2.5, etc. What we saw is that the most people would convert for new users. They would convert between 2 and 2.5 seconds. It was significantly higher. What we then started, when we started implementing a lot of the fixes, we saw the chunks from 4 seconds, it would literally move to the 2 seconds, but the conversion rate wouldn't change. So now you've proven that a faster website leads to more conversions. In our case, every half a second was 12 million in revenue yearly. So if you combine these 3 things, you suddenly have a massive business case to focus on speed and not just purely for ranking.
Right. That's the key part, where you'll hear SEOs arguing about speed doesn't matter, it doesn't impact rankings, and it's like, no, dummy, the goal is to make more revenue. I win.
Yeah.
You know?
But the other part is, it does impact rankings.
Yeah.
Because the user signals. So because if your website is significantly faster than the other ones, and they get to you and they don't do a repeat search, and it fits the complete picture, you'll have a ranking benefit. But it's not like you've shitty content but a very fast site, so you're going to rank number 1. It doesn't work that way.
Right. So engagement metrics. So fast website with quality experience equals better engagement ranking, better Definitely. Engagement, which equals better rankings. Mm-hmm. Okay. I love it. Okay. A couple more questions. One of our favorite questions. Well, let's save that for a second. I want to know, like, when I've talked with you, the thing that struck me is you're really, really, really flipping crafty. The way that you glean insights, the way that you see things is different than how other people I've met see things. So I'd love to learn more about how you try and find answers, or how you critically think about, like, how do you solve problems? How do you try and navigate challenges? Because I think the way you do it is different than the way that most people I've met solve problems. And I think it's fascinating. And that's one of the questions we try and ask is, like, how do you think critically? How do you, like, do you have a framework for solving problems?
No framework.
Okay.
I think, So here's an observation I have for you.
Yeah.
I feel that the most interesting and most forward-thinking SEOs have some form of a neurodiverse brain.
Right.
And the reason they ended up in SEO is because there is no one way to solve a problem. So all the really good SEOs, the ones that are like have a unique way of doing things, they don't go from A to B. They take all the ingredients and they see which one they can manipulate, change, and then see the benefit, right? So the way a neurodiverse brain works, in my case, ADHD works, is that my brain can take loads of inputs and do all the processing there, and I'll see the end goal. So my brain never stops. So I like to be challenged. And then from that challenge, I take everything that I've seen and where I've been and see if I can solve that problem. And otherwise, it will just keep nagging me. So I don't like people to say, you should do this. I want to know the why. And once I understand the why, I can use it in different cases. This is why I don't specialize in a single vertical. Because if you do that, you're missing out on a ton of knowledge.
Totally, 100%.
So I think, I just love solving puzzles. I sometimes jokingly say, I solve puzzles all freaking day. That's it. I just solve puzzles.
So,
And yeah.
No, keep going. You're doing great. I interrupted. Sorry.
No. But what you'll see, and this is a very interesting observation I've had, is some really big names like Nick Eubanks and some other ones, really smart people. Once I started explaining to them what ADHD is, they suddenly were like, oh, fuck. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm on the same boat.
Yeah.
And another interesting observation is that I now take medication for it, which helps me focus. But and I only do it when I'm working. But otherwise, I would always use a whiteboard because I would just start drawing because my brain would go from one end to the other end, but nobody could follow me. So right. I needed to draw the lines and how everything would be connected.
Yeah.
So I think that might be different, but it starts with curiosity, and it starts with there is no one way of solving SEO. It really isn't. There's tons of ingredients. It's like cooking a dish, right? So people come over, you ask them, are you allergic? Do you like hot food, spicy food or not? Do you like fish, meat? And all that information comes to you, and then you do your groceries, and then you prepare it in the way you think it fits the best with the people coming over.
So do you try and serve oysters for all your guests, or some or none? Or I've heard through the grapevine that's like your favorite thing.
And you know what? This was an experiment in itself. So if you look me up on Instagram, for instance, there's basically 5 pictures. And I've repeated those since that talk about psychology. So the way I look at things is, if you're consistent in constantly giving the same imagery, it will overwrite people's memory of who you are. So when they see you, they either see, we need to have oysters, or when you're only going on holiday. So there's a few pictures that will always stand out because they're the same pictures in different locations, but the same view. It was oyster time with its own hashtag, or it was like, it was an experiment to see if I could overwrite people's memories about me.
So yes, it worked.
Yeah, definitely. because
you're the oyster guy.
I do. No, so the interesting thing is now my clients take me out for oysters. Guess what? The best restaurants have oysters. The cheap ones don't. So I'm the big winner here.
Oh man, I love that. Okay, so take us through. This is my favorite question. Take us through your biggest F up. The thing that you busted, broke, revenue tanked. Take us through your biggest F up.
There's a few. But I think the biggest one was going live with full on no index on it.
Oof.
And noticing it 2 weeks later.
Oof. Wow. Crazy. Okay, so take us through some of your biggest wins, and also, are there any through lines between the wins? Are there any sort of things that have happened over time that sort of are consistent through your wins?
I guess the really biggest wins are what I saw is at scale. If you anything at scale is more interesting. So say if you win half a second and you make 12 million more, getting 1.8 seconds equals a lot of millions, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned is like even small changes, if your website is big enough, it's still definitely worth doing. So those are really big ones. I think one of the other big wins was a big retailer where a new iOS version stopped working in the checkout. So JavaScript broke their checkout for an iOS device.
Wow.
And finding that in GA and fixing that made them a lot money. They didn't notice. They just saw the conversion rate going down. And I think this is also why you need to segment. Same kind of issue we've had on the babysitting platform where a phone that wasn't sold in the Netherlands but was big in Brazil and in Spain, it had a market share of 30%. It was Alcatel. And you were unable to actually load our Angular backend. So nobody was able to actually use the website. And once we fixed that, look at the impact. In those countries, you're losing out 20% of people. So those kind of things really make massive differences. And I think another one was taking over a website that loaded in 30 plus seconds.
Oof.
We put it on the biggest Amazon machine. It went down to seconds and we quadrupled the traffic overnight.
It's amazing. Okay, so who makes you jealous? Which SEOs or digital marketers do you wish you could crawl inside their brain and just hang out for a little bit?
It makes me jealous. I think I like Jarno van Driel. I like chatting with Jono Alderson. I like chatting with Dave Sotimano. I like chatting with Ross Steffendale. Those are people that inspire me because they also have a different perspective from me. They challenge my thinking. So those are the ones. Am I jealous? And have I don't think I have.
We got a minion behind you.
Yeah, I know. Ik zit in een call. Sorry. Wat? Nee.
When do we get to go to dinner? Dad, take us to dinner.
Ik zit in een call. Ik kan niks even. No worries. That was Dutch. I told her that it was another 7 minutes, and then no, I there's the one thing I would like to get more of is the knowledge that Simo Ahava has on GTM, because I'm definitely nowhere near his skill, and I'd love to learn more about it. And I love to learn more about. So one other person who inspires me is Bastian Grimm. I think his decks are amazing, most of it, and he also he tells things very structured, so it helps me in a kind of a checklist, because otherwise my brain goes all the way, and he's just very structured. And I love learning more about like doing stuff on the edge. I think that's really cool.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, Dave's one of our heroes here. When he showed us how to build cloud functions, that served as like the foundation for most of the innovation work that I've been doing over the past year. You know, like figuring out how to connect cloud functions with task queues in order to create a long running application. Just, it was such a game changer. It made things possible that weren't before. So very, very cool. Let's see. I just wanted to get a couple more questions in. What things do you think are sort of like trending to be more popular? And we're not talking about algorithm changes, but like what kind of like features on websites, or what technologies? You mentioned the edge, but like, are you paying more and more attention to entities and structured data? Like, where do you want to learn more about other than analytics stuff?
So I mean, I'm really so entities are just like I really like that part, because it connects the dots. It shows you how a search engine is actually not as smart as we think they are, and they need a lot of help. So those are the things I'm really getting into. The other thing that I feel more people need to get into is understanding how the web actually works. So I don't think a lot of people know what a reverse proxy is. I don't think they know what DNS does in a lot of cases. They don't know about how tracking actually works, what referral data. It's like, I see so many Google Analytics accounts where everything is direct, and I'm like, well, it's not. So you need to figure out what's actually happening there. And I think as marketers, you need to know that, because it's your only source of truth. And the other big thing that I'm a really big advocate of is talk to your freaking users. They're not just numbers, they're actual people.
Yeah.
And like, dude, so those are, for me, the big things I talk about. And I often get asked, like, I want to rank better. I'm like, with what? You've got shitty content, it doesn't work the flow, like, why? Fix the basics. And I think that's the other part I'm really into, is just fixing the basics. What am I really interested in is I'm looking forward to governments taking a bigger stance on cutting up big tech. And I really think that's needed, because Google knows more about us than most governments of the countries we live in do. Which is in a way a good thing, but in a way not a good thing, because they're for profit. So they're going to leverage to make it more profitable. Whether it's Amazon, I mean Facebook, look at what's just been said. So I'm really that makes me excited. And in a way, I'm really happy that I live in Europe, because Europe is in the forefront of privacy in that.
Well,
So
this has been an amazing episode of Agency Automators. I am just tickled pink that you were able to spend an hour with us. I'm incredibly grateful that your health is on the mend. I'm just so happy, and
that's good.
it's just so great to spend time with you. Jordan, we did it. We got another one in the can. Boom. We got it in under an hour. Boom. Very exciting.
So and we had Arnout on. I've said this on Twitter, but every time I chat with him, mind is blown.
Yeah.
So okay, one question from me to you guys. What part? What's the one thing you're going to do after having this episode?
Bug you for all the names of all the people that you mentioned, because they're all Dutch, and I'm like, oh my god, how do I even? I think I want to start playing with that Lighthouse package, that node package. That looks really interesting. It looks like something I could do. You got me thinking about page speed on the conversion side, so that when I talk with either clients or colleagues, it's not about the ranking so much, it's about the conversions. And also the thing that you shared that struck a real chord with me was, it's not what are your goals. With a lot of my discovery calls, it's like, what are your goals, which almost always are more revenue. I haven't asked them, how do you make your money? Like, that's a fantastic question. That's just one that's not been in my arsenal. And a lot of it's because I've worked in the same vertical forever, just bike shops. Like, I know how they make money, so I haven't been asking. But what about you, Jordan?
Yeah.
Entities.
Yeah.
How can we layer entities on top of Google Search Console and search data to better create content that is tied to your business or a website? And we talked a bit about that pre-show as well. Yeah. And that Lighthouse budget thing, I did not even know that was a feature. That's super interesting.
It is.
Really cool.
It's cool. Okay, cool.
Everybody, this was awesome. Everybody out in the world, keep automating, and we'll get more episodes pumping out this fall as we move forward. All right, guys, be good. I'm sure I'll catch you soon. Bye.
Okay, cheers.